Good afternoon, and welcome back to Never Is Now, ADL's signature summit on anti-Semitism and hate. Since 1979, ADL's Center on Extremism has published an annual audit of anti-Semitic incidents. In its 40th year, in 2019, that audit said that there were over 2,000 such anti-Semitic incidents in the United States, a 12% increase from the year before, and the highest number ADL has ever published. In particular, violent assaults against Jews went up 56% from the year before, with more than half taking place in my region, especially against Hasidic Jews. That is the bad news. The good news is that each time there's an anti-Semitic act, communities, family members, and survivors move forward to heal, to build bridges of understanding, and to send a message to the world that despite the intentions of their attackers, Jews are still here. Today's panel is not about terror per se. It's about strength, hope, and resilience. And I am very pleased to introduce the four panelists who will bring this to life. First, we have Rivkie Feiner, a community activist from Monsey, New York, and the CEO of Feiner Grant Strategies. Second, Dalia Grinfeld, ADL's Assistant Director of European Affairs, based in Berlin. Third, Rabbi Jeffrey Myers, the Rabbi of the Tree of Life congregation in Pittsburgh. And finally, Rabbi Moshe Schapiro, the founder of the Chabad branch of Hoboken and Jersey City. Now to our program. Let's begin by talking a little bit about where each of your communities is today. And I'm going to start with my colleague, Dalia Grinfeld. Dalia, a year ago on Yom Kippur, a terrorist tried to enter the small synagogue in Halle, Germany, which had about 50 worshipers at the time. He was determined to kill Jews. When the door held, he went next door and he killed Muslims. And unfortunately, he succeeded in that. I love the fact that the young Jews of Germany commemorated this incident this year with a festival of resilience, and it was held in a sukkah. Tell me why they chose to do that and what it says about where the Jewish community is today in Germany.
So the whole background story of Halle and why also so many young people and actually so many people were in the synagogue on Yom Kippur in Halle was that young Jewish people went to Halle, which is a small city in former East Germany, to live up Jewish life and really enhance the Jewish life in East Germany. So this same community in Berlin then also said, it's not just victims. It's not negativity only. Obviously, this is a very intense situation for all the victims and the entire community, but we didn't want to leave it there. We didn't want to leave it at a negative point, but wanted to grow from it. Wanted to grow from it as a community, as individuals, and also wanted to take it into a light of coming together, of getting together. And as you may know, a few months after the Halle attack, there was another attack in Germany in Hanau, so about 6 months later. And that's interesting because both communities of both of these attacks, one anti-Semitic and one more anti-immigrant, anti-Muslim, came together to be allies, to support each other, not only as victims, but as members of the community, and with this allyship, to support community gathering and getting together. And the idea was the Festival of Resilience, and really the theme was resilience, because not only in the times of COVID and in times of terrorist attacks and bigotry, hate online and offline, it was about coming together as a community with allyship, and was about finding resilience in a terrorist attack, or finding resilience despite maybe a terrorist attack.
It's just so interesting because really the story of Jews in Germany all by itself is a story of resilience. So it seems very fitting. Rivkie, your experience is a bit different. It hasn't been quite a year since a man entered the home of a rabbi in Monsey during a Hanukkah party intent on killing the Hasidic Jews inside. He succeeded in stabbing 5 people, one of whom died from his wounds. You were a mile away at the time. As you described it to me, the Jewish community in Rockland is still very much, especially those Jews who are visible as such. Maybe describe the situation for the Jewish community in Rockland 1 year later.
Yes, well, I would say very similar to how Dalia described. People are scared. People are still reeling. People are afraid, especially now, we said COVID, and a lot of the media coverage talking about the visibly Hasidic and Orthodox Jews, and people are very uncomfortable. And it changed our way of life here. That was a crossover to, we were not used to having incidents like that here in Rockland before. And it's just very scary still on the ground. Coming into a house of worship is the most, sacred place it's supposed to be that no one's supposed to ever touch. So we really felt violated. And it's just changed how people feel about security and fear every time they walk into a house of worship. And I know for my own kids, it's just scary.
Yeah, I think you said to me, your kids don't want to go outside then, and even possibly not being so visibly Jewish.
Well, I remember that Friday night after my kid was dressed for shul after I lit candles, and he didn't want to go to shul. And he's 12, he always goes. And I looked at him and he goes, I don't want to be stabbed. And I was like, okay. I sat down for him 2 minutes and I, spoke to him and I gave him a hug and I said, you'll be okay, no one's coming, in my heart of hearts, what should I tell you? We daven, we pray that things should be okay. But it was scary to push him out that door, but that's what I had to do. And thank God he's continued going. But for me as a mother, maybe seeing my kids visibly Orthodox going into places, it's scary.
And just to be clear, you're not a member of the community that was attacked. You're a member of the Jewish community, but there are all different types of Jews in Rockland. But you play a bridging role between that community and the broader world, which we'll get to. Rabbi Schapiro, like Rivkie, you became a spokesperson for a community of which you are not a part when a gunman came into a kosher market in Jersey City, which caters to the Satmar community. That gunman killed 3 people after having killed a police officer just a few minutes earlier. You stepped up because the Satmars are insular. And among other things, you used your platform to bring the broader Jewish world and the non-Jewish community together around this incident. Tell us a bit about how you did that with the ARC program and the dinner that you held.
Scott, thank you for having me. I'm glad you mentioned the ARC because I take this everywhere. This is a little charity box that
we didn't plan this.
ARC. No, but I take it everywhere. So everyone knows what happened back in December 10th of last year. There was a gunman who entered it and killed 3 people at the grocery, and the poor worker, Douglas, the Ecuadorian worker, and the young Hasidic lady and her cousin, Mr. Deitch, they were killed. So I'm a local Chabad rabbi, and somehow people were calling me from all over the world for a statement because there's no phone number or spokespeople there at this very small community in Jersey City. And I started asking other Chabad rabbis after, doing a lot of meetings, what can work to try to get into this other community, if you will, and say, how can we show them that Jews are not so crazy? And because the media was projecting, maybe this happened because Jews are moving in and they're taking away homes and properties, etc. So some of my colleagues, Chabad rabbis around the country, which is so interesting, the ADL has a meeting today. Today is the Chabad conference of Shluchim. And particularly in El Paso, Texas, where the Chabad rabbis initiated this program. It started in South Africa, where we did this little ARC standing for Acts of Random Kindness, getting this little plastic charity box, stakapushka, into every single home. We're trying to do it in Jersey City, but hearing from other rabbis in Connecticut, in Texas, where they've started this project. And the idea is that the resident or the child fills it up, and when it's full, passes it to somebody that needs it, pay forward. And the concept is, how do we get young people, particularly, we pushed it in the high schools in Jersey City, where there's a lot of gang problems and drugs and shootings, etc., is by starting to train them, you know what, think of someone else. Do an act of charity every day, and in a month or 2 months when it's full, give this to someone else, starting to train them that person living down the block may look different, may have a different color of skin, but really we're all the same, we're all God's children. And in the other cities that this is being successful in, is, if I can just share a story, they asked one of the young kids, a high school boy, what's your feedback? 3 months. He says, I've never noticed poverty in my city till I started giving a daily charity. Charity is a mitzvah for all human beings. It's actually connected to one of the 7 universal no-hide laws. So this was something we did locally with a couple of Black leaders who got together with me, and we went to many of the high schools in Jersey City, and we had meetings with the Board of Ed of getting this started in town with the children. So this is one of the great things we did after the attacks.
Okay, so I'm going to move to Rabbi Myers. And Rabbi Myers, in your case, it wasn't about you reaching out to the broader community. It was about the broader community reaching out to you. And this was obviously in response to the massacre of 11 worshipers at your synagogue on the Shabbat morning, on a Shabbat morning in October 2018. And the word that you used in talking about how people reached out to you was love. You said that you were enveloped with love by the non-Jewish community. How did that manifest itself?
I would say that we benefited from outreach from every corner of the globe, people of all faiths, essentially saying to us that the act of one human being does not reflect the totality of what humanity is about. And that as a people, we abhor this. This does not represent humanity. And that we are here for you to give you this massive global hug. So it was not merely local or regional or state or national. It was an international response to a massacre that continues to this day, since we just recently concluded the second yard site for the 11 martyrs. And it goes on through to this day as people continually reach out to us to say, we think of you, we care, and that this is not what it means to be a human being.
Yeah, I mean, the way you said it was that the entire Pittsburgh community was traumatized by this. And you even mentioned that the Post-Gazette, well, why don't you say what the Post-Gazette did?
Well, Post-Gazette received a Pulitzer Prize for their coverage, and we're very proud of that. I can't recall which day it was. It may have been the Monday after that Shabbat or the Tuesday. The banner headline were the opening 4 words of the Mourner's Kaddish in Aramaic, which is uncommon for a non-Jewish newspaper to take the effort to find the font and to properly place it there. And it was, to me, the most powerful cover of a newspaper that I've ever seen in my life. And it just really summed it up that, as you said, the entire city of Pittsburgh and the greater region mourned this.
Rivkie, I know that you had a different experience in Rockland in terms of the broader community reaching out. You sort of described them as being briefly sympathetic, but it didn't play out quite the same way it did in Pittsburgh. Maybe talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So I would first like to say that there were some people from the community outside of the Orthodox community who really did come close and really feel for us and comforted us and said, we're with you. We may not look like you. We may not dress like you, particularly from the Rockland Federation or the JCC members and different people I had relationships with prior to this. But outside of that, and there was some, it was terrible what happened. So there were some people who, called it out for what it was. But shortly after, and far too quick, people were saying it's the Jews' fault. And similar to what Rabbi Schapiro mentioned before about, maybe too many of you came in or took houses or grew too fast. And so you did this to yourselves. And that's the issue. It's about life. It's not about, and the way Rabbi Myers just described, I really thought it would be a time for people to really come together of all faiths, of all colors, of all, to stand against this hate together.
Thank you, Rivkie. And you mentioned Rabbi Schapiro. I'm going to bring you into this conversation because you played an interesting bridge role throughout this. And I thought it was so special that you raised money for the Rodriguez family. Douglas Miguel Rodriguez was an immigrant from Latin America. He was working in the store in Jersey City and was killed helping a Jewish person. How did you decide to raise money for him?
Well, it came in a way of communities all over saying, what could we do to help both the police officer, Detective Seals, who was gunned down just a few minutes earlier at the cemetery, and then this young Ecuadorian, Douglas, who literally, I don't know if people know the background, but if I can just share it briefly, there was 2 young visitors who came in from Brooklyn to visit their cousin who owns the store, Mindy Ferenc. And this young guy, Moshe Deutsch, comes in with his cousin and he hears some gunshots and he sees his cousin falling back and he figures there's he's hit in his head, but he doesn't know. And he runs to the back trying to find a way out. Then he sees this worker, Douglas, and he says, "Is there a way out here?" And Douglas goes and opens the back door, and this young Hasidic guy runs out. And at that moment, Douglas was shot dead. So he literally saved his life, gave up his life saving someone else. So the community got together and said, let's do something to help this young daughter, 12-year-old girl. And we got together and we said, how can we help her? The first thing she says, well, my dad promised me a laptop and some stuff for school. So we got that. We got a donor and we bought it for her. But then we found out that the needs are much greater. So we did a big campaign to raise serious money for them. And we helped her with her immigration issues, thanks to a kind lawyer, Mr. Wilds, who pro bono came to help her with her immigration stuff. So really, we're all created in God's image. We're all one. And here was someone that was at a Jewish location, and he was shot because some horrible, terrible people, gunmen from outside, shot in. But we came together to help her and her individual needs while she was going through the crisis.
And Dalia, in a similar vein, it ended up not being casualties in the Jewish community. It was casualties in the general community, in the Muslim community. Were the Turkish and Jewish communities in Halle or in Germany as a whole drawn closer together by their shared part in the attack of the synagogue?
I think it's important to note that the attacker of Halle specifically had a target, the Jews within a synagogue praying on Yom Kippur. That was the target. And when that didn't work, thank God, luckily, when that didn't work out, also sadly, he moved on. He shot at people, POC people on the way. He killed other people with an extremist, racist, anti-immigrant, anti-Muslim view. So it's not just that this person was anti-Semitic. He in general had racist, extremist views, and that was shown. So I think in the aftermath, on the one hand, the Jewish community was struck really hardly because it was targeted at them and at us. But on the other hand, the results, the casualties, the lives lost were not on the Jewish side. So I think there was definitely an allyship afterwards that hasn't been there before. As I mentioned before, between the two attacks, Hanau and Halle, but also in general within the different communities who were forced in the position of reacting to this incident. One great example that I like to show today is the Jewish Student Union in Germany actually did a huge fundraiser for the kebab shop where the second part of the attack happened, and they raised, as a student union, they raised over $25,000, almost $30,000 or euro within a few days, and gave it to the person because he was so affected, and not only because of COVID, but because of this attack. So it was a Jewish institution who said maybe the lives lost were not on us, but we want to support and we wanted to help. So I think that was a great example of allyship, and the other way around, the same. So within the Muslim and Turkish community, there was a lot of support for calling out the attacker, for calling out the anti-Semitism from this person. And within the German political view, so just to give an understanding, very quickly it moved from calling him an anti-Semite to a racist far-right person, which is not untrue. But still, a lot of politicians left out the anti-Semitism part, because in Germany, being a country where we, as a Jewish community, live on the grounds of the Holocaust, where the Holocaust and Holocaust remembrance, you can see it basically daily, and it's very important here, which is a good sign. But also, every time you call out something as anti-Semitic, it is a different spotlight on it. So I would definitely say you could see in the media that a lot of the politicians in the political sphere, it was called as a racist, far-right extremist attack, and the anti-Semitism was left out sometimes. But especially the marginalized communities as Turkish, Muslim, and immigrant communities, especially those called out the anti-Semitism as well. So I think, and also allyship as in calling for the same things, for example, as ADL did, better, more security for Jewish institutions. So calling on what the actual Jewish community needs and not just calling on issues for themselves. So I definitely, Scott, would say that there is a certain allyship that came from this, and a certain community understanding and understanding of each other's realities in life in Germany.
I should also point out that you were the former president of the Jewish Student Union, so you have a special connection to that organization.
I do, yes. That wasn't a special treatment on that end.
All right. We have different responses, but even in Pittsburgh, where the non-Jewish community could not have been warmer, there's still white supremacist activity, including a gathering a few weeks ago in Pittsburgh. I'm curious, Rabbi Myers, how you react when you hear of white supremacist activity.
It's not going to go away. What the responsibility is of the communities who do not ascribe to that point of view is that their voices, the voices of good, must be louder than those voices, must reject in no uncertain terms that those voices are not welcome, not just in Pittsburgh, but anywhere in the United States, if not beyond. That certainly is one step that's necessary to drown out, as I call it, the H word. You must drown it out by even more goodness. And that's a necessary feature that we must be on guard for every single day, because there will always be someone somewhere who is a bad character, who will say and do things that hopefully most of America finds abhorrent. So we need the silent majority to rise up and no longer be a silent majority, to be a vocal majority and say, we do not accept what you say and what you do, and to be an American means that this is not how you behave. I'm still waiting for those loud vocal voices to speak up and say so.
I'm going to turn back to Dalia briefly, because it just really makes me think, I'll ask the same question of you with neo-Nazi activity. How do you react as a German, as a Jew in Germany, when you hear of neo-Nazi activity?
So at this point, I will point out that the reality here on the ground is a bit different in Germany, because our laws prohibit, for example, certain types of speech. For example, Holocaust denial is actively forbidden here. It's very different than in the US, where you have the very large freedom of speech. When it comes to violence, obviously, also different laws that apply. When it comes to neo-Nazi, anti-neo-Nazi activism, there's a different alarm that goes off, I think, in the German Jewish community than with other types of extremism. So extremism and anti-Semitism is on the left, on the right, in the middle, in the center. It's everywhere. We know that anti-Semitism doesn't belong to a certain class. And when it comes to neo-Nazi far-right activism and the work against it, there's a different, as I said, alarm clock that goes on. But the good part is, especially when it comes to these neo-Nazi types of activities, there's a high alert. So within the German law enforcement, within the German political institutions, within the civil society especially, there's a clear understanding that there's no space for that, which on the one hand manifests itself as a high potential for acting against it and a lot of opportunities to do so. But on the other hand, also law enforcement, for example, does not know how to recognize it sometimes. Law enforcement doesn't see doesn't know of all the symbols, doesn't understand all of the secret codes. So it's not always 100% clear who is a neo-Nazi, what is the group that is being in focus at the moment, especially online. So that's one thing. And on the other hand, when it comes to fighting neo-Nazism, it's not blank out there that they gather outside and you can just talk to them. It's a lot of dark spaces. It's a lot of spaces that we cannot enter as a civil society sometimes. So that's why, for example, prevention work is so important. And the German government, especially, also with a lot of help and support from Jewish communities and also Jewish civil society organizations, work on the prevention field against these types of behaviors and violence and thoughts.
So speaking about dark spaces, Rivkie, I know you're active on social media. What is the role that social media plays in both in the act, but really in moving beyond the terrorist incident, or does it play a role?
Yeah, so it's a huge, huge concern because social media, certainly locally, obviously it's everywhere now, but we certainly see it on many pages, hate, calling us out. I mean, when it came to whether there was a measles time or now COVID, people talking about containing our community, not letting them out, not letting them into stores, that's very scary rhetoric. And the fear is, and many worse, I'm not even saying, kill them and we hate them and they deserve to die and why didn't Hitler finish the job? I mean, a lot of really, really horrible posts, and they're pervasive. It's not like one page. And then the fear is, what's the next step? Because unfortunately, when you see it on social media, we worry that the next step is, God forbid, violence. And so that role is very scary. And I feel a huge part is certainly in terms of, I'm not Hasidic, but in terms of, my boys who wear the yarmulke and the tzitzit sticking out and oftentimes white shirts, or the Hasidic people in the community are visibly Orthodox, visibly Jewish, visibly Hasidic. They're targeted. They get screamed at. In Brooklyn, Williamsburg, we saw people being beat up just for walking on the street on Shabbos, doing nothing to anybody. And so the fear is real, and we believe a tremendous amount of it is a result of what's on social media.
But, you also play a bridge role. And in that bridge role, you're very interested in helping people understand that Hasidic Jews are human, who they are, why they do what they do, why they believe what they believe. Does social media help you in that regard, giving them a more human face?
So it almost sounds laughable when you say it, right? But it's really true. Meaning not that they think Hasidim are so weird or different. I feel that so much of this is out of fear and hate. So we try in social media. I would say the biggest part, and let's say in my role at the Rockland Federation CRC, Evan is one of the people who literally will go after a lot of the social media that's negative. And even she is not Hasidic. She's, Jewish, but not Orthodox or Hasidic. And she still will fight to get posts removed, to get posts taken down. In terms of putting out positive, it's much harder. In other words, that's why explaining who we are. If today by speaking here, and I can explain to one person that we're human beings, right? We may practice our religion differently. We may eat different food. We might worship more or certain times a day, but we still love our children. We still love our families. There's still so many things that we have in common. And people just look at us and like to point at us and say bad things that, we're doing. And so as much as we can get out positive, but I don't think there's enough of a push to get out positive messaging, but I think there's definitely a huge push for us to try to stop the negative media. So when the media puts out a story and, it's all Hasidim faces when they're talking about maybe a surge in COVID, why are our faces on the cover of that paper? And so whatever we can do in that respect, we feel is very important work.
Does anybody else have a positive experience with social media? Okay, well, that's very telling. Okay, yes, Rivkie.
One thing after Pittsburgh, actually, my husband's boss, who does not wear a yarmulke, felt for 30 days, I want to put on a kippah. And he said he's older, and he said, I can't do the social media. And he knew I'm on Twitter a lot. And he asked, and he shared a picture, and I posted on social media. And it went a lot of places, got a lot of beautiful messages that if Steve can wear a kippah, what can I do? And I got messages from all over the place. What can my class do? What can we do? So that was after what happened in Pittsburgh. I have to say it wasn't a result of Monsey, but it was beautiful. It was meaningful when people were sending positive messages, and that he felt, I want to show outwardly. And I had other people who put on whether a Star of David they wanted to wear, even men, and they said, I want to show that I'm Jewish. I don't want to hide that I'm Jewish. I'm not going to let them do that to us. When you're talking about the resilience part, a lot of people said, what can I do to stand out because I want to identify with them? Sorry, you just triggered that memory.
No, that's great.
So one thing that came to mind immediately was a positive outcome or a positive experience is that a lot of people in Germany said, oh, anti-Semitism is still an issue. I didn't know that. So a lot of the Jewish institutions here have security, full-time police, and are really, especially, I would say, guarded. But a lot of people said anti-Semitism is not real anymore in 2019, or is not a thing anymore. So despite all of the incidents and despite of how the Jewish community, individuals, and a society was feeling, the general society didn't really acknowledge that. So I think one of the issues, especially also on social media, the younger generation posting about it, tweeting about it, having a conversation, that it is still an issue and even a growing and larger and more complicated issue. Not necessarily a positive outcome, but an experience that developed the feelings and the understanding of the Jewish community was finally a step further, that the general society understood that, yes, anti-Semitism in 2019 and also in 2020 in Germany is still, and in Europe, is still an issue that concerns Jews, but also should concern everyone. So I think a little bit there was a a bit of a change that the general society understood, oh wow, there's still a lot to fight against, and we as a general society, civil society, have to fight for something. So I would say that is one of the outcomes, especially because for the last, or up until maybe 4 or 5 years, a lot of the Jewish communal organizations were saying anti-Semitism is still a large issue here, but neither politicians nor media nor others were hearing it so much. So that is a new development in the last 4 or 5 maybe years, that this civil society acknowledges that. And Halle opened up the conversation again, that there is still a lot to do in Germany.
And of course, you have the appointment of Felix Klein as the Commissioner on Anti-Semitism, and you mentioned to me that you now find quite a number of non-Jews at rallies protesting when there are anti-Semitic incidents, which was not the case in the past.
Definitely.
Rabbi Schapiro, I know that you have dealt with resilience after terror, not just from the incident in Jersey City, but really from day one of your posting. You arrived at your posting. Was it actually on 9/11/2001?
So we opened the Chabad, the Hoboken in Jersey City, that Rosh Hashanah, which corresponded, it was September 17th, 1 week later, the Tuesday after 9/11. And, we were planning a moving during the summer. We were visiting people, and that was our first event, Rosh Hashanah, high holidays. And our synagogue, where we got a location to open our Chabad, was literally on the waterfront on First Street, right 1 block from the water, where thousands of people were coming to the pier because watching the flames, unfortunately, and the smoke right across the river in Lower Manhattan. And what we saw immediately then, people were, got together, were, very proud Americans. There was so many flags up, etc. But what the message we shared at the time was, the Talmud teaches us that a good action is so much more powerful than the negative action. So if 19 people could come together with literally box cutters with small blades and create so much havoc and kill close to 3,000 people, bring down economies and destroy our way of life, think about if a few of us come together to do acts of positivity, acts of random kindness, the tremendous effect that reverberates throughout the world. And that message really continues through our last, almost 20 years here in Hoboken and Jersey City, and everything we do, reminding people and ourselves that it's really, we could look at the shooting attack, terrible thing. Look at the community in Jersey City. They're not running away. The majority of the community of Jersey City, it's not Jewish people, it's not Hasidic, it's African American. And Dalia mentioned earlier prevention. We did something unique, and that is we got together with a few Black leaders who joined us at the same schools we were dealing with, 3 or 4 big high schools in town. And we said, you know what, let's start going back to the basics. A lot of the violence, a lot of the terrible shootings is, they claim because they're different. Well, you know what? Deep down, we're all the same. We're all created in God's image. So everyone talks about education as the key to prevent all kinds of crazy things in life. But education is a very big word. How do you narrow it down to something concrete? So we all know until 1956, every American child in school had prayers. That was removed by the courts. But in the 70s and 80s, our Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Schneerson, made a big campaign. Let's introduce a moment of silence. And the idea is that not that the teachers tell the students what to be thinking, the parents will tell the children, do you know what? Today, when you have your 60 seconds of quiet moment at 8:30 when the bell rings, think about so-and-so, because people were worried if my child is Jewish and there's a Catholic teacher or a Muslim teacher like this, it's up to the parents. We know American family doesn't have time around the dinner table. American family is, you watch Oprah did a show where all the kids order takeout and they meet at the door and they get their food and they go back to the computer. Could you imagine every American family has to stop by dinner and they talk about how the day was, and tomorrow, think about so-and-so. And the idea is that you really give children the idea of thinking, you don't want to use the word God, fine, but there's a higher power, there's purpose, there's reason of what I am doing here in this world. And it's so interesting, the data is out there. Today there are 12 states in the country that mandate moment of silence. There's another 13 states that it's voluntary if the schools want to do it. And the courts basically ruled that it has to come from bottom up. Every district has to decide. So we try to push it here in the cities we live in, Hoboken, Jersey City, Weehawken, and Bayonne. We're looking at right across the river in Brooklyn, where a young rabbi convinced Mr. Frank, Avram Frank, went to about 90 public schools in Brooklyn and Queens and Manhattan, and he convinced the principals, try this moment of silence where you give the children an opportunity to think of the goals of the day, how I'm going to get through the day, what's the purpose, why am I here in this world? And in the most amazing way, one principal in Bed-Stuy, where 95% of the children are on lunch programs, and she says the amount of kids that are now not missing schools, doing better at work, not getting involved in gangs afterwards, all this stuff is unbelievable. She says, my own children on Saturday and Sunday want to do a moment of silence in the morning. So this is it's a preventive thing. It's a way of saying a child when they're older, we in our country, what do we teach our kids? How to get ahead, how to make some money. But you know what? We also teach them, I just have to be smarter than the police. But if we tell them, well, wait a minute, there's an eye. What does the Mishnah say? There's an eye that watches, there's an ear that listens, and everything's recorded. We're accountable for our actions. If we can start integrating this idea, inculcating into every child in America, there's purpose and reason, and I'm all accountable for my actions. Maybe when they're a little older and some of their friends want them to get involved in gang violence or everything else, hopefully that solid foundation will stay with them for life. So this is something we did, as Dalia mentioned, prevention, going into a lot of schools and of talking to students and telling them, think about the purpose we're here. We all look different, but really we're all the same. And we did the same thing, as you mentioned earlier, Scott, at a Shabbat dinner. We did a Shabbat dinner. We call it Shabbos of Unity. It was back in February, right before Corona, right at the end of February, right at the beginning of February. And we brought together about 180 people in Jersey City. We invited students from Douglasson High School, Lincoln High School, the worst parts of Jersey City. They came with the principals, and they were sitting around this huge hall with some Hasidic Jews, some young professionals, some families, all the members of the city council, some elected officials came, and they were like, this is unbelievable. This is Jersey City, not the shooting attack that happened 6 weeks ago where it looked like it was black violence against white people. This is Jersey City, where people can come together and have a Shabbat dinner and talk about that we may look all different, but deep down, we're all created in God's image. We are all the same. So that kind of messages.
That's a good note to move on to the next speaker, and clearly in keeping with the way that I started the conversation with you. Your MO is certainly reaching out to the non-Jewish community. Rabbi Myers, I know that you drew lessons and comfort, not just from the community in Pittsburgh, but from other communities in helping you move beyond the terror that also experienced terror attacks. You're in regular contact with the pastor at the AME Church in Charleston, for example. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, in that case, Pastor Eric Manning reached out to me, and it just blossomed from there into a beautiful friendship where we provide support for each other. That's grown to the other communities around the United States who are members of this horrific club that nobody wants to be a member of, where there have been massacres. So we've had conversations over time, and I don't want to exclude any, but I think all of you can think of other locations around the United States where there have been massacres. And over time, we understand each other. We understand our needs. For us in Pittsburgh, what can we learn from all of these communities, the ones who precede us and the ones who've come after us? And it's this beautiful fellowship, this camaraderie, this unity born from a massacre that helps us find ways to move forward, answers to questions that sometimes we find unanswerable, solutions to potential problems that they've already faced so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. So I'd like to say if there could be any positive thing out of what happened to us, it's this connection to these other communities that is really very, very valuable. And we are so lucky that they've reached out to us and we communicate with each other.
Thank you, Rabbi. We have a few questions. The first one is about what can be done to avoid negative images of Jews in the media as being associated with sickness, such as measles or COVID. Who wants to tackle that?
I can answer. Okay, thank you. I did a lot, actually, and as much as I could do, and that's how kind of this role happened, is just because many people were afraid of media because we've been burned so many times, or media will twist your words. And I said, I'm going to try. And any media that then did twist words or change the narrative for what they wanted or to make it salacious, because that's what sells, well, then I'm not going to be speaking to them again. And so I happened to be at the press conference when the county executive called an emergency order to do with measles, and media right away spotted me for being Orthodox. I was the only Orthodox woman aside from one media person in the room. And suddenly I was surrounded by at least 6 of the major TV channels and asking me questions like, your kids vaccinate? My kids were 100% vaccinated. It was like each of those things. And the only way I feel that we can do this is like one person at a time giving out the truth, the message. Meaning my kids are vaccinated. I checked my school's data. They were like 99.whatever% the kids vaccinated. I was able to, I believe in data, like give me real numbers, give me, and I went and researched. So I was able to quote what the truth was as opposed to, oh, we found a school that has 28%. Well, did you look at that non-Jewish school that has 28%? You know what I mean? Somehow the story was only about them or how they look. And so in terms of COVID, again, the media likes to focus on those that weren't listening or those that, didn't do something right. And every community has bad actors. No community is perfect. At the same time, there's no one covering all of us. My business was 100% closed for many months. Our houses of worship were closed. In my own shul, in my synagogue, they removed chairs and tables so it could be more social distancing. We were allowed 50% capacity. How painful was it to put up a sign on the front door, you can't come in? Like, that's it, we're at capacity. We counted a certain amount of people and our goal is always to be open. We want to let everyone in, but we couldn't. But those stories aren't what's covered. And so as much as we can, by having relationships with the media and being comfortable in speaking to them and finding those who are trustworthy and getting out the correct message, they will have my attention. That's the best I can offer on that.
Rabbi Myers.
The world's oldest disease does not have a cure, and that's anti-Semitism. Throughout history, whenever there have been difficult times, those people who are suffering will find scapegoats for that. And historically, it's been minority communities, and most particularly the Jewish community. We were blamed for the bubonic plague, even though it hit the Jewish community in the same percentages and numbers as it did the Gentile community. We were blamed for the 1918 pandemic. So it's no surprise to me that there are those who blame the Jewish community for this current pandemic, because that's the way of, regrettably, some people is to find blame and not to see how can we work together to find creative solutions. The media is only interested generally in the salacious negative stories, which sells newspapers, increases ratings, etc. One has to be diligent in creating and crafting relationships with good media who do fact check, who do present balanced reporting. And those are the relationships to continue to craft. The ones who do not are the ones who don't deserve attention. But to increase the loud voices of reason, increase the voices of those who do report fairly and evenly and balanced, and to force them to do that, and to demand of media that the balance between the bad news and the good news is horrifically out of balance. We need to find a bit more equilibrium. We need to find more of the good stories because there's more good out there that they just are not interested in presenting.
We have another question, and it's actually it's a good question for ADL. And the question is: does the panel have practical advice on how teachers can help promote acceptance in the public schools, Certainly ADL does a great deal of training in the public schools. You can all go to adl.org and look at the No Place for Hate program, A World of Difference, Words to Action, all different programs that we do in the schools. But I have our panelists here, and I'm going to ask them if anybody wants to talk about the role that educators can play.
So if no one jumps, I'm going to jump. So besides great programs like A World of Difference, which definitely changed my world in a different way and made it into a much more colorful way, and No Place for Hate, such really great programs, because it was previously said education is a large environment, a large topic, but it is also a key to unlock certain ideas and certain behaviors also. But besides these great programs that Scott mentioned, I think on the one hand, being aware of one's own biases. So if a teacher presents that I'm not perfect, I have biases and I made mistakes and I judge people maybe in advance, maybe not in the classroom specifically, but in general in life, I think young students can also realize it is something that is normal. Biases are universal. It is something, stereotypes, biases, it's something that we all have, and it's something we have to manage and deal with. And I think being a leader, and as a teacher, every teacher to me is a leader, as a leader in the classroom and beyond, if you acknowledge yourself and your own biases, that is a step towards the right direction. And then another tip that I would say always helps is getting out of one's bubble. So while the teacher does this itself, but also to advise to the students, look at your Instagram, your TikTok, whatever your feed, your Facebook for our generation, where look at your feed. What does your feed look like? Does it look like you? Is it only a box of chatter that you already agree with? And I don't mean you should follow extremists. I mean the other way around. Are you white and do you only follow white people? Then you should maybe look out of your box, out of your bubble, to follow also other people, to understand the realities of people who are not like you, people who have experienced different paths of life maybe, or live a different life, look differently. So I think this is something manageable. This is something doable that every student can do. Every young person is able in their hours on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube to also look at something else, and to kind of have a bigger horizon and to learn and to grow from that. Because I'm a strong, and ADL is a strong believer of everyday life has to do a lot with our mindset and has a lot to do with what we engage and whom we engage with. So tweaking that is a great way, additionally to obviously programs and teaching and learning and reading about it.
And Rabbi Schapiro, you wanted to add something? Thank you.
I did. I want to share what I shared, that a few of the principles that really, if the teachers can start communicating this idea to students, our differences is what makes us special. The fact that we're different in different color skin, different nationality, different religion is what makes this country so great. It makes us as a people, as a nation, as a world. And therefore, it should be celebrated that we're different. And really coming back to what I mentioned earlier, the basics, we're all created in God's image. We're all the same. And, it sounds like basic stuff, but kids need to hear this at a regular basis. If I can chime in about the media, I had, many media interviews, and I told them all, you don't need me for a story, you know what happened. But if you want to talk to me, I'd like you to share in a small message of hope and positivity. And almost all of them left that in, because I told them, there's a million people you can talk to. If you want to hear something about the community, I'll share with you. But please leave that message on. And so many of the news reports kept that in. Light will always win over darkness. And when I told it to them, please leave that in, they ran with it. You know what? He's right. Everyone's talking about how sad this is. A little positive, little light will push away so much darkness.
So I want to ask, maybe we'll start with Rabbi Myers. Your visibility following the Pittsburgh, the Tree of Life massacre, it gives you a certain moral voice. How do you refrain from getting pulled into political discussions and not taking sides when you're probably asked to? And maybe I should start off by asking, are you asked to take sides?
I don't think much anymore because I've been consistent in my messaging. I made it clear from day one that I'm the rabbi of both Republicans and Democrats in my congregation, and I have both. I'm not going to take sides when it comes to turning off or leading to dismay for any set of my congregants because of any political leanings. So my political leanings are my private business, and I keep it that way. But that being said, hate speech and the evil that occurred to us transcends politics. It's not about politics. You don't become that way because you belong to a political party. You had these leanings, these teachings, well before you declared your political party. So we find that it doesn't matter your political party. It will be in all groups. So when those things are clear, it's not about politics whatsoever, that they don't come into play. Number one. Number two, you can make laws, but you cannot legislate away the words and the deeds of people in this regard. So therefore, it's not about legislation. It's not about politics. It's about we the people saying that these words, these behaviors are unacceptable. And if you want to live here in America, those are rules that you have to abide by.
Does anybody else feel that they get caught up in politics? Rivkie?
I would say less about the media actually asking me, but there are times where politicians, especially locally, I'm talking about when they're running, for their next candidacy, their next seat, and they put up really a lot of hate things against the Orthodox community, like the storm is coming and all negative movies and videos, or preserve Ramapo. We don't want the Orthodox coming here and moving here. Then it's about, I'm happy to out loud, just speak against those actions. It's not, let's say, which political party or anything like that, but that those actions aren't acceptable because that's their way to get their base to come out and vote, and they want to win. And just so, that's not acceptable. I've also introduced my own children to a lot of the politicians. I've taken one of my sons to Albany, and locally, many of the politicians have heard my kids, and even one spoke in front of the legislature. I just wanted them to see what an Orthodox Jewish kid who goes to yeshiva looks like. You hear about us. I don't think they ever met one. You could speak to my kid about Talmud. You could speak to him about sports. You could speak to him about history and geography. So I thought that was really important that they got to see who we were on the ground. But outside of that, it's much more about actions. If someone does something unacceptable that's outright against the Orthodox or Jewish community.
Rabbi Myers, when you and I spoke, you used a very important phrase. You said the phrase, "we the people." And that was in reference to how you would end hate. Maybe say a few words about how we the people can end hate.
Well, I live in Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. His house is about 6 blocks away from mine. We don't know our neighbors. When we don't know people, it leads to misunderstanding, mistrust, fear, loathing, eventually the H word, eventually the transition is complete and you've gone totally to the dark side. There has to be a concerted effort on all levels of society to get to know our neighbors. When we get to know our neighbors, we see that we have so much more in common with our neighbors than we have that's uncommon with our neighbors. Those commonalities are what unite us for common purpose, for the common good of all citizens. So we must find ways to create concerted efforts to get to know our neighbors. When we do that, that's how we eliminate the H word.
Thank you, Rabbi. And Rivkie, the Jewish people have been the victims of so much persecution over millennia. Tell us a few words about how you relate to that, how you feel the Jewish people have overcome that and moved on. It's not just about terror attacks that have happened within the past 2 years.
So firstly, thank you for including me in this panel. All the panelists were amazing, and I appreciate hearing each one of their stories. I have to say, like Rabbi Myers said, I think, anti-Semitism isn't going to go away, and we have been scapegoated forever. However, we have to do our best in each of our communities with, the relationships that we hear about. I love the arc. I love, showing that. I love the concept. And we each have to just do what we can better. Part of it for me, is speaking to the community and showing who we are and breaking stereotypes and having people learn. Again, Rabbi Myers just explained about knowing your neighbors. It's not so scary. getting to know them. And just to know that within the visibly Orthodox and Hasidic communities, there were so many good initiatives and are and continue to be, from COVID plasma initiatives to bringing food to first responders, and just the things that you're not going to see in the media. So I appreciate all of your efforts. I hope we don't have any, we can just celebrate resilience and positivity going forward, and, God willing, no more attacks. But really, thank you for this.
Thank you. And finally, Dalia, you are the youngest person on the panel and therefore really represent the future. How do you move on with strength, hope, and resilience after a history of so much persecution, especially in Germany?
Scott, that's such a big hat to take, the future. I would say the entire idea of resilience, and also this panel From Darkness to Light, is that there's two ways of going about it. On the one hand, it's really factual to the needs. There is needs of Jewish communities and marginalized communities in general. For example, in Germany, with security issues, that Jewish communities need better know-how in terms of security, or law enforcement needs training on how to enforce the hate online, how to enforce the actual laws. There's really factual things that need to come into place, where ADL and governments, Jewish communities have to work together to get to a point where Jews and others are safe and feel safe and can live their lives. On the other hand, it's maybe a bit more emotional and a bit more of the future generation and how we look at each other and how we look at ourselves. So on the one hand, the allyships, the empathy that we grew from these dark moments, from these attacks, and from these places of hate, the allyships we can grow, the empathy for each other, and especially the advocacy we can do for each other. So the Jewish communities for other communities, and other communities maybe also for the Jewish communities, this idea of empathy, coalition, of working together, I think is an idea that not only we at ADL, but also in general can come and can grow from these places, despite of hate and against the hate. So I think the next generation has an opportunity to take that step, and not only to take it as some individual, but to take it as a community, and to put together different communities towards the same goal, towards working together, towards advocacy for the same goals. And I myself see a lot of young people going in this direction. I'm very glad. I'm very happy to see that a lot of young people realize that it's not just me for myself, but it is, as the other panelists also said, it is about all of us. We the people, we the general society. It's not just fighting for oneself, but for everyone.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support JBS with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double chai or more. Simply visit the JBS website at jbstv.org and click on the donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check to JBS, Post Office Box 360, Stamford, Connecticut 06904. Or you can call the JBS Pledge Line at 833-MY-JBS-TV. That's 833-695-2788. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive with our compliments. We thank you for your kind support.